My name is Anushri Biswas. I come from India. I was born and grew up in suburban and urban areas of Bengaluru. However, over the years, I became curious and intrigued to learn about my roots as a Bengali. So I joined a small community called Bengali in Bangalore, BNB, to understand the Bengali culture. And a few years down the lane, I took an opportunity to relocate from Bengaluru, known as the Silicon City, to Kolkata, the city of joy, in 2012, where I worked and lived in the hustle and bustle of the city for 4 years, followed by 6 years mostly freelancing in the more peaceful suburbs. Presently, I am residing in a small rural town in West Bengal. Having already observed the urban and suburban setups, I jumped at this opportunity to live in the rural parts of our country, as I thought it would allow me to live close to nature and learn about the differences in thought process, mentality, upbringing, religious practices, beliefs, and their effects on the human mind and society in all these three types of areas. Intending to understand the root cause of problems we face as a species and understand why we do things the way we do them and what happens if we change the course of our actions, for example, following the set rules and standards set by society, or practicing spiritual, religious, business, corporate, or even fashion rituals and trends, to name a few, intending to find out how not following these can affect the human mind and the overall health of a human body. 2 years ago, I set out on one of my many quests, sitting right on my desk as I created this YouTube channel and renamed my blog pen slide to Sansarik Sannyasin's Wonderland, which is now the Fool's Wonderland or Chronicles of the Fool, where rules do not exist, where each of these names and my articles expressed my state of mind and the stage in my life in that particular time frame. So, for those who do not know me, my blogging journey began in 2008. After seeing back to back catastrophic events and their portrayal in the media year after year, all those years back then. It all started with Gujarat's Bhuj earthquake on 26 January 2001, following the kidnapping of Dr. Rajkumar by the bandit Veerappan, when my city witnessed riots and intense tension that went on for 108 days in the year 2000. Suddenly, the world began to seem like a questionable place to be in. It seemed violent, scary, almost petrifying, full of problems and unjust to this 11-year-old who comes from an unstable middle class environment as her background, who had just started writing poems and making paintings about topics like the mistreatment of animals and people in their old age and corruption, learning about it from the television dramas where it was portrayed often, and then went on to learn all about pollution, going on an exposure field trip to a solid waste management project after joining CMCA, Children's Movement for Civic Awareness, in school, who, like many others in the country, on that fateful day, instead of watching the Republic Day parade, suddenly began to see the images of lifeless limbs and bodies that were covered yet somewhat visible, just enough for our imagination to run wild, as they were carried out of concrete rubble and shown on the television screen after the earthquake in Bhuj, Gujarat. During that time, all I imagined was how much pain and fear those victims would have endured when they got crushed, How painful it must have been to die like that, and seeing those images, death seemed petrifying. Knowing all too well that everybody has to go through it and none of us is immune to it, it dawned upon me that losing my loved ones like this was an idea I could never come to terms with, that I could not accept. As a result of all that imagination, as an 11-year-old, I remember running quite a temperature for a few days, imagining what if I lost everything like that too, as I realized that nothing is for sure and nothing is forever. The fear stuck with me for years as anxiety that kept building up each passing year with every such event in my unstable environment. I did not know then what it was or how to explain it, not knowing the exact source and not having the vocabulary to express it. Anxiety became a part of me over the years, and I did not know what it was to be without this feeling of constant fear anymore. All I could say was that I was scared, but I did not know why. I remember I used to say this quite a lot. However, the incomplete information I was giving out somehow came off as outlandishly mystical, and some even thought it was supernatural for me to be so scared and quiet always. It must be ghost stuff that scares me, was probably the thought. So I somehow found myself getting prescribed enchanted water, cuffs, kada, amulets, tabis, and crystals of all kinds by Maulvis, pundits, and astrologers due to the suggestions and even forced references from caring neighbors and strangers. And I did wear them all the time. I did not know if it worked, but I liked how it looked in a weird, fashionable sense. All this was just the beginning, just an intro, a door opened for me to the reality of the vast world outside of home and school at that age. And suddenly, getting distinctions in the subjects I studied like I used to in the primary classes, an expectation from elders most Asian kids can relate to, became the least of my concern as I now had a lot more on my little mind. Soon, this was followed by many more such back to back events, and during some of these, I somehow found myself in close proximity to the riots or bomb blasts, which made me think, what if it was me? For example, when Dr. Rajkumar got kidnapped by Veerappan, all schools abruptly closed down the next day as the news of the kidnapping spread. The faces of staff and teachers looked worried and tensed, and I found myself returning home on our school bus midday with all the other kids as the riots started. Our bus stopped a few times and there was panic amongst the children, but it was also laced with excitement and joy as we knew we had no school for a few days at least. Being amongst the younger kids, I could not see outside but only imagine as I heard screams and talks about how the tires were burning or how other vehicles were shattered and broken on the streets. As I sat in the midsection of the army truck that was our school bus, which to a great extent made us feel somewhat safe. It was quite a comfort in that chaos. Then again, the bomb blast at Mariwala bus stop, where the lady died during the Bangalore serial blast in 2008, hit home hard. Those days, it was the bus stop where I waited for my bus on my way back home from Christ University. It was quite a shock to think about taking a bus from the same bus stop that evening too. I remember the chaos and panic in our classrooms and how I took a cab instead of that bus after receiving the news from my mates as I had my phone switched off in class. I still remember the fear that I felt throughout the time I was in that cab. Questions ran through my mind like, what if something blows off somewhere? Is this cab safe? Are the streets safe enough? Will I reach home in one piece today? I remember I kept my brave face and did not express any of this fear to anybody then or even after until right now. I soon realized that somehow everybody begins to act normal and go with their day to day life as if nothing happened after such events. Fear and panic slowly subside as things get back to normal and people are no longer concerned or bothered as long as nothing happens to them or their loved ones. It seems to be one of the harsh truths of life, but it was something I could not grasp or understand at that age, so I often questioned how can people forget and go about their life like always after all this? I thought reminding those in power about these problems would help fix them, so I questioned and pointed them out in my blog. However, I now understand how dissociation and disconnection from traumatic events can help individuals and groups move forward in their life and is needed too. Thus, all the different types of exposures I received has helped me learn to see things from different perspectives rather than just one like I used to. The blog was also a result of the other civic problems we witnessed as Bangaloreans, like Kaveri water dispute, deforestation, increasing pollution, potholes, bad roads, climate change, and traffic, which bothered me and everybody every day. All this somehow made my blood boil just enough to start a blog named Journal Space in 2008 as a personal project while studying journalism. However, I could write very few blog posts there as I had quite a lot on my plate with my studies, assignments, internship, and other co curricular activities at the university. I was posting sporadically. I stopped blogging on journalspace.blogspot.com after I graduated from Christ because, like the comments mentioned in my articles, I realized that I was only questioning and pointing out the problems and that I did not have any proper practical solution to offer. Soon after, I learned about WordPress. It seemed like a better place, so I moved shop and gave a new name to my blog. Pen Slide was the name I assigned to it that somehow expressed my mental conflict after my time in university when I had to decide about my career. As I could not find solutions to these worldly problems, I dived within, focusing more on expressing my confusion, my thoughts, and my feelings by literally letting my pen slide. I wrote down my encrypted thoughts by letting them run wild. After graduating and receiving an interdisciplinary bachelor's degree in three majors journalism, psychology, and English there were many options to explore, which was overly confusing, and pursuing higher education was not one of them for two reasons. One of them was that higher education was not a financially feasible option, and the other reason that counted the most was that I was confused. I not only had an equal interest in all three subjects, but I also had not yet figured out my true passion. I was not very knowledgeable about all the options that were available to me. Being born in a middle class dynamic, not many people would talk or know about anything other than engineering or medicine. Also, since I had no clarity about myself and my desires, I could not get myself to frame a question for my professors who probably could have helped. So I somehow developed the idea that any other degree would only let me get a mediocre private job or would get me married. And the other option was to be an entrepreneur. So I looked forward to exploring all my career options and learning more by gaining experience on the job. Meanwhile, alongside all my confusion about my future, I was also drawn towards volunteering in CSA, Center for Social Action, during my time in Christ University, which allowed me to mingle with little kids who lived in the slums as I participated in helping them with their studies weekly once and spreading awareness through street theater. I also went camping as a CSA volunteer in a village named Hoskote, where I learned all about sericulture. During our time in Hoskote, we were divided into small groups of 3 to 4 people to interact and spend time with families in the village. I had the opportunity to interact with a household that was into sericulture, silk farming, and I saw silkworms happily eating away the mulberry leaves. I saw the cocoons and I saw their doomed fate. For some time after my team won the first prize during a mock newspaper making competition held as an assignment for credits in class, for which we came up with the name Scorpion Times, the sting in journalism. Investigative journalism seemed quite intriguing as a subject. I often thought about it during my years in Christ and even when I started working full time in an ad agency as a copywriter. However, my interest in investigative journalism was short lived. Around the same time, we saw the Nirbhaya case on the news that stayed on the news and in our mind for the next few years. There were concerns about my well being from my family, which played a role in most of my career related decisions, so I stayed on the safer part of desk jobs. Those days, all I knew about myself was that I liked to write, and being curious was my nature. Over the years, I got the opportunity to explore various job opportunities in the corporate and business world as a content, copy, or script writer. I hopped jobs either by choice or sometimes by fate and worked with startups, mid sized companies, and large establishments to find my place, to find my niche. I also worked with clients one on one and sometimes wrote the content in bulk for a few agencies to get by as a freelancer in the gaps when I was not working full time. I took it as an opportunity to observe and learn about the different types of corporate establishments and their work culture and politics. Working with all these companies and freelancing with various clients from all walks of life over a decade helped me gain experience and deal with many brands, big and small. Some of them are listed here. During these gaps in the timeline, I also worked on a few of my own projects. Some of those are Jamit, Cozy Bites, and Pork Hoddle. Jamit was an event I spearheaded, organized, managed, and successfully executed in 2012 by partnering with an associate startup called Creative Chaos. By hiring a team of 3 MBA students as interns, along with some help from others who partnered up later to help me with the process as the event began to take shape. Jamit was an event idea executed successfully to uplift India's indie rock music scene by bringing the music fraternity under one roof. Innumerable telephonic and door to door cold calls and meetings later, I found some sponsorships. Amongst the sponsors, we had Kappa on Sarjapur Road, Bangalore. Being only a year old in 2012, they agreed to provide the venue and food for brand exposure, which kick-started the process. Furtados sponsored the musical instruments we needed for the gig. The rest of the sponsors pitched in for the stage, lights, sound, transportation, and other miscellaneous requirements. The indie bands that performed for the event were Ux, the Indus Valley Project, and Velvet Rose. And among the panel of speakers were Jishnu Das Gupta from Swaratma, Ganesh Ram Nagarajan from Agam, Swami Sita Raman from Agam, Ranjan Ghoshal from Mohiner Ghodaguli, and Indian luthier Arulnathan Dominic Xavier from Arul Guitars, who took turns speaking for the event on the topic Sustainability of Indian Rock Bands in India. Jam It was more than just a jamming session. It allowed indie musicians to come together to learn, network, perform, make live music, and as a result, have a great time together. It gave a platform for the musicians of different genres to come together to create new sounds. Everything was on point. The event itself was loved and appreciated by those who showed up. Others wanted to see more such events in the future, except that, being a rookie, I made a rookie mistake. I came up with the date 23rd June as it was the weekend. Although I checked that there were no festivals or national holidays that day, somehow World Music Day, celebrated on 21st June, skipped my mind until it was too late. 23rd June was the weekend right after World Music Day. Bangalore saw quite a few events that night, and there were many more small and big music gigs on the menu for one and all to attend other than Jam It. It caused a dent in the footfall and revenue generated, which led us to dissolve our team and the partnership. Continuing jam it sessions on small scales, maybe just an acoustic jam and networking session, was a thought I had in mind. However, the rookie mistake I made somehow blew my confidence away. I neither found the energy to make the cold calls again nor could I find my confidence to do so. So I came to Kolkata as planned even before Jamit happened and started a new journey. I started afresh by looking for a job, and meanwhile I freelanced as a writer and found a few clients. One of them was Agate Technocom. I got the opportunity to write as a freelancer for their magazine named Wellness and Wellbeing. I was allowed to select the topics of my choice, so I loved working on those articles. I interviewed musicians like Amit Datta and Somlata Acharya about linguistics, on using slang in music and conversations in the indie rock music scene. I also interviewed people bullied for their looks, who found music and other creative skills to be an outlet for their emotions. I chose to study the music scene as I had worked closely with indie musicians and people in this field for quite some time. Side by side, I was gathering sponsorship for others' events. I also wrote in bulk for a few agencies to make some money on the side until I found a full time job in a company called 88DB that opened a new branch in Kolkata. However, it soon closed down. I started working on my second project, Cozy Bites, soon after. Established in the end of 2013, Cozy Bites was my opportunity to see how I can turn a tiny space that was less than 70 square feet in the area and a minimal budget of less than 20,000 rupees into a business idea. It came with its challenges, which tempted me even more. Cozy Bites was a place created for people to come together and mingle over a cup of tea, and a tiny space for the students living away from their families to find good food and care, with the inclusion of simple recipes like turmeric milk, haldi doodh, and herbal tea that mothers and grannies usually offer in every household when we feel sick. Completing the project by networking with people in the food industry and dealing with the local vendors to get the job done brought back some of my lost confidence. After Cozy Bites and during COVID, things started going downhill. Most of my clients for whom I wrote could not pay, and by then, writing content in bulk or for websites felt meaningless, tiring, and passionless. It started to take its toll on me as it was out of necessity and not from my heart. I invested my little savings in a tiny sewing machine and a little fabric and used the rest of it to buy food to feed the strays a few meals in the following months as I worked on my third project and vision, Pork Order. I thought at least this would work, for I loved animals and working for them was a childhood dream. So I thought this must be my niche. However, I couldn't carry on with it all alone without any support, and I had no more savings to spare, and another of my attempts to find my niche seemed to have failed. Looking back, I see how each of these projects I worked on helped me not only hone my skills but also learn and get an idea of how things work by networking with people in the corporate world, the music scene, the food industry, the pet industry, and projects that deal with animal rescues and adoptions. It allowed me to see how we treat stray animals in different societies and communities, and what the animal rescuers have to go through by networking with others in the field and experiencing some of it myself. All these observations, explorations, and failed attempts at finding the niche I'm passionate about resulted in mental turmoil, depression, anxiety, and feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness over the years. For a person who always warned others about their addictions and constantly told them not to smoke, coming from an unstable background that I mentioned, I somehow couldn't resist the temptation of curiosity to find the answers to questions like why people smoke or drink in the first place. Why can't they stop their addiction? What is in it to make them want it so much? Is it just the substance or is it something more than that? These questions, backed with all that mental turmoil and hopelessness, made me join the band of smokers in 2012 after Jamit, and after a few years, I fell into the category of chain smokers. It was hard to get out of it, and I found the answers to my curiosity that led me to it in the first place. So the next question was how to get rid of this addiction. I tried it all, from nicotine gums to vapes and e cigarettes, but nothing worked. All this led me to explore the healthcare field as a patient to find help, which went on for a few years. When nothing helped, I took a complete hiatus from the corporate and business world by calling it my sannyas, hoping to find myself by exploring the spiritual path and the spiritual ways of life since the end of 2020. Understanding my lived experiences, behavior patterns, and mental blockages through in depth analysis over the years helped me go cold turkey on my addiction. I have been smoke free for around 3 years with zero temptation or cravings, as clean as a non smoker can be. Looking back now, I have had the opportunity to observe and study the different sections of the corporate and business world, the creative industry, the medical field, especially that has to do with psychology and psychiatry, the spiritual community, and also the socio-economic groups and subgroups of people belonging to various religion, culture, and other demographics in the rural, urban, and suburban areas as I lived in rented houses throughout my life. I also had the opportunity to observe how havoc caused by any catastrophic event or its portrayal in the media can affect the human psyche, especially that of a child, by understanding its effects on myself. Through intense analysis and paralysis over time, I could connect the dots between my lived experiences and the mental health issues I developed with time. My educational background, interest in biology, knowledge in psychology, and Sanskrit, the medications prescribed by psychiatrists who treated me for some time, and my spiritual practices came together as tools as I can now say that I lead a somewhat healthy lifestyle that is addiction free. As I mingled with each group of people, observing how things function in these setups, it helped me learn how our mind interprets information and how our body reacts to it, allowing me to understand things from an anthropological, psychological, and sociological point of view by keeping psychology as its base. Having worked in many startup companies and after all my attempts at starting a few of my own, somehow taught me to see the flaws in the system when working in the larger companies, which was not very helpful as an employee, as I soon learned that pointing those out to help the company with a good heart, which I did a few times, was not my job. But on the plus side, it taught me to see things from a wider angle. I have been studying the different cross sections of society and various demographics from an opportunistic, complete member researcher stance to understand how the human mind works and to study the gaps in the existing understanding of our societal construct through my practical experiences. So far, I have been chronicling my findings in various forms, encrypted in metaphors intended mostly for my understanding and future reference. Through all this, I have learned to see things by keeping various perspectives in mind, and I also learned that my niche that I am passionate about lies in learning itself. It has been the only constant throughout, other than my social work. As I love to investigate, study, and solve problems. Looking back, I can see how I love to bring people and things come together in everything I do. My journey so far helped me understand that learning new things and working for a cause gives me utmost joy. It is where my passion lies. Now, I plan to incorporate all the skills that I have honed in all these years and all the knowledge that I have accumulated through my practical experiences into learning and studying further and sharing everything that I learn on my journey through my work here on my channels. I now look forward to using my observation chronicle thus far as tools that aid in my understanding to eliminate any bias caused due to studying from the perspective of self. I plan to do so by incorporating comparative studies, structured ethnographies, and other such research techniques to find and show correlations between different subjects and provide a bias free explanation for our anthropological and social concerns by keeping the human mind, psychology, and sometimes the body, biology, in the center. Since qualitative research techniques like autoethnographies, when used on its own, have their drawbacks. With this in mind, I plan to continue with my self studies and learn more about the different fields of anthropology and techniques of ethnographies as it seems to be falling in line with my work and interest. I will also continue to work towards improving the quality of my videos to share everything I learned on my journey and learn better ways to give my words and voice to those who have none. Seems like being confused and lost enabled me to gain some practical experiences in life which would not have happened if I had chosen any other path. I plan to create a new channel with a more professional approach comprising my studies related videos and the Fool's Wonderland. This channel will remain the Wonderland, my space where I wander, reserved for poetry, art, and random thoughts. Having been away from the academic way of things like academic writing for almost a decade, I might come off as a little rusty in this arena. So kindly bear with me as I learn my way through it. Thank you for stopping by. Stay tuned for the upcoming new channel. Until then, take care and have a great day.